Florida's coaching search hasn't exactly gone according to plan. Despite how this season went, the Gators still have plenty of talent, plenty of NIL money, and they fired Billy Napier early enough to get a jump on the rest of the market. On top of that, Lane Kiffin has reportedly wanted the Florida job for years. He was the fan favorite, he was the national favorite, and he was the kind of splash hire that almost felt impossible to screw up. And yet, Florida somehow didn't land him. Instead, they ended up with Jon Sumrall, a group of 5 coach, just like Billy Napier, a coach coming from Louisiana, just like Billy Napier, and a coach whose offensive identity isn't all that different from, you guessed it, Billy Napier. So with Gator fans furious and the national media confused, the question becomes, how did Florida miss on Lane Kiffin, and is Jon Sumrall really Billy Napier 2.0? Let's start with Lane Kiffin. Kiffin had reportedly wanted to take the Florida job last year, but unfortunately for Florida fans, the athletic director, Scott Stricklin, decided not to fire Billy Napier yet. This, of course, didn't just lead to the disaster of a season they've had, but also to there being way more big-name teams also pursuing Kiffin. Even with all of that, Kiffin was still a pretty heavy favorite to end up at Florida. Kiffin had even wanted the Florida job back in 2021 when Florida initially hired Napier. Kiffin obviously wanted to coach Florida. This is where the incompetence of Scott Stricklin really became apparent. To start off, Kiffin and Stricklin didn't get along well. Add in the fact that Stricklin was dead set on bringing a general manager with NFL experience instead of the Ole Miss general manager Billy Glasscock, who Kiffin had already worked with and had success at Ole Miss with. Kiffin was concerned that Stricklin was going to meddle with the football team and prevent him from doing what he would want to do. The general manager situation was probably one of the main reasons he felt that way. Stricklin didn't really seem fully bought in on going after Kiffin either. As this CBS Sports article states, Stricklin, a more buttoned-up personality, had preferred Napier's no-nonsense approach over Kiffin's antics the last time around. Now that Florida has brought in Jon Sumrall, that preference is shown to be true once again. Now that the Kiffin saga is over and Florida has hired Sumrall, the question that's on every Florida fan's mind is, did we just hire another Billy Napier? If you just looked purely off of resume, it would be hard not to feel that way. As I mentioned earlier, they both came from G5 schools in Louisiana, and Sumrall's record at Tulane and Troy combined is very close to Napier's record at Louisiana. While skepticism about Sumrall is certainly fair, there are actually some reasons to have optimism about him too. Probably the biggest difference between him and Napier is their personality. After watching through the introduction press conference, his personality actually feels similar to a Dan Lanning more than a Napier or Mullen. He just sounds more fiery and competitive. He seems like he's more charismatic when he talks, but he also maintains the friendly players coach vibe that Napier had. The biggest concern in hiring somebody similar to Napier was the offense. The defenses under Napier were usually pretty good. The recruiting under Napier was good, and the culture also was good. The only glaring weakness that Napier had was his offense this year, and really since he took over. The issue is, the offense was really, and I mean really bad. No matter how bad the offense got, Napier refused to give up play calling. After all, he was an offensive guy and he wanted to have control of that side of the ball. However, there's a reason good coaches like Ryan Day gave up play calling. It's because it's hard to be the best of the best at calling plays and also managing head coaching duties at the same time. Some coaches are capable of it, but many aren't. And Napier was not one of the few that could handle both. In addition, Napier's scheme really just didn't work in the SEC. Many former players and coaches said that his offense was not at a SEC level, and LaMichael Pirine even called it a middle school offense. So when Jon Sumrall comes in, having run a pretty similar offense at Tulane, the majority of the fan base has justifiably been concerned. Fortunately, he's made it very clear that he doesn't plan to fall into the same trap. In his introductory press conference, he stated, "One of my first priorities will be to assemble an incredible staff, including an offensive coordinator who understands that at Florida, having an explosive offense isn't optional. It's mandatory. That's the style Florida has won with in the past, and it's certainly the style fans want to see. So far, he's put his money where his mouth is by hiring Georgia Tech's offensive coordinator Buster Faulkner. Louis Riddick had plenty of good things to say about him, and Riddick certainly did not have much positive to say about Florida's offense last year. So that hire will help put to rest the number one concern that fans had about him. Sumrall is still a question mark. Maybe not as much of a sure thing as hiring Kiffin would have been, but there's a lot more to be optimistic about with Sumrall than there was with Napier. Napier had some really good culture building and recruiting abilities, but the in-game coaching and preparation was where he fell short. Since Sumrall seems to understand his limitations and is getting a good staff around him, he could be a much better hire than fans are thinking. The criticism of Stricklin, unfortunately, does not end with the coaching search. Stricklin made a move that has left many fans scratching their heads, particularly Florida fans who are also Jaguars fans. That is because he hired David Caldwell to be the general manager. Instead of taking Kiffin and his general manager who had already had a lot of proven success, he wanted to take a guy who had a bad track record with the Jags. It would have been one thing to hire a failed NFL general manager and have him be your college GM. It's a whole other level to do that with a guy who failed for the local NFL team. It basically ensures that every fan who likes the Jaguars will dislike the hire. And I can tell you, a lot of Florida fans like the Jaguars, or at least have enough familiarity to know David Caldwell did not succeed. His career record with the Jaguars is 39-87, a 31% win percentage, and Florida wanted him over a proven college GM. That's a decision that's pretty hard to explain. The truth is, if Florida can't turn into a true contender within the next few years, then it's probably time to get rid of Stricklin. Florida is a big school with lots of NIL, lots of talent, and a location that people want to be at. In addition, the team is going to have a $16.3 million budget just for assistant coaches, which will probably be the largest in the country. To put it in perspective, Georgia had a $10.3 million assistant coach budget this season. Florida's going all in, and if they can't succeed, we're going to have to stop blaming all the failed coaches and look at the one behind the scenes who keeps hiring them. Quick time out. If you're enjoying this breakdown and want more deep dives like this every week, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow, and it guarantees you won't miss the next one. Back to the video. At the end of the day, Florida finds itself in a defining moment. Jon Sumrall may not have been the headline-grabbing hire fans dreamed of, but he represents something that Florida desperately needed after the Napier era: self-awareness. He's already shown he's willing to build a real staff, hand over the offense, and adjust to what wins in today's SEC. That alone separates him from the mistakes that ultimately sank Billy Napier. But even with all that, there's no denying the bigger picture here. Florida had every advantage: money, talent, timing, even a coach in Lane Kiffin that was practically waiting by the phone, and still managed to walk away empty-handed. That doesn't fall on Sumrall, that falls on Scott Stricklin. If this hire doesn't work, the blame can't keep landing on the coaches who cycled through Gainesville. At some point, accountability has to move up the ladder. So is Jon Sumrall really Billy Napier 2.0? He might share a resume, a region, and a similar offensive background, but the real difference will come down to self-awareness and staff decisions. Sumrall has the resources and support to succeed, but there's one more layer to all of this, and it will define how Jon Sumrall is remembered at Florida. Sumrall doesn't just have to succeed on his own terms. He also has to keep pace with Lane Kiffin. Fair or not, the fan base will always compare what Florida has to what they could have had. If Kiffin goes to LSU and starts winning at a high level, especially if he competes for and wins multiple national titles, then even a good tenure from Sumrall is going to feel underwhelming. That's the burden of following a hire that fan bases desperately wanted but never got. Sumrall doesn't just have to prove he's a good choice, he has to prove he was the better choice. If Kiffin becomes a superstar elsewhere and Florida is just solid, the narrative won't be that Sumrall did well. It'll be that Florida settled and paid the price. And that's exactly the pressure that Sumrall and Stricklin will be facing from day one.